to the season 4 premiere of Rediscovered movies. I'm your host, Nomfanelo Malloy. So the film that I'll be discussing is Here Comes the Boom. So Here Comes the Boom is a 2012 sports comedy film. It's directed by Frank Coraci, who's known for directing films such as The Wedding Singer and Zookeeper. The screenplay was done by Alan Loeb and Kevin James, who also is the lead in this film. So the film also stars Henry Winkler and Salma Hayek. So here's a synopsis. This is from Google. Once a collegiate wrestler, Scott Voss, played by Kevin James, is now a 42-year-old apathetic biology teacher in a failing high school. When cutbacks threaten the school's music program and its teacher, played by Henry Winkler, Scott springs into action. He dusts off his long, unused wrestling skills and earns money for the program by moonlighting as a mixed martial arts fighter. Though the school nurse, played by Salma Hayek, thinks he's crazy, Scott gains something he never expected, and the school rallies behind him. So the film was released in theaters on October 12th, 2012. So the production budget is $42 million. In terms of the box office, it made over $73.2 million worldwide. It opened at number 5 domestically with over 11.8 million during opening weekend. So it was beaten by films including Taken 2, Argo, and Simpster. In terms of critical reception on Letterboxd, it has a 2.7 rating. It was nominated for 3 Movie Guide Awards, including Best Film for Families. At the time of this recording, it is streaming on Tubi and is also available on demand, so check your local provider. All right, let's get into first discoveries. So I believe around the time this movie came out, I did see a trailer for this movie, and I thought, oh, it's okay. And I think years later, I decided to check it out on Netflix, and I found, oh, this is quite enjoyable as a comedy. I found surprisingly it has a lot of heart than expected because since this movie was produced by Happy Madison Productions, which is what Adam Sandler's production company, I figured that this movie would have been in that vein, similar to movies that are under that banner. But yeah, like this movie, I was surprised it had more heart than I thought it would. And as a sports film, yes, there are the cliches in regards to with Kevin James being like the underdog athlete that's trying to learn the ropes of the sport. Of course, he has his ups and downs, like, and manages to get better and all that stuff. So, yeah, if you're familiar with the typical tropes from the sports genre, this film has all of that stuff. But rewatching it now, like for this podcast, I thought my thoughts haven't changed that much. I still find it quite enjoyable. It's one of those movies where you could just turn your brain off and just go along for the ride. But it is surprising to see, like, watching it now. Joe Rogan is in this movie. He plays himself. I think at the time he like was associated with UFC as a sports commentator. I don't know if he still is doing that today, but it's just interesting to see him in this movie with hair, especially because as right now, like we know him to be like the podcaster with rocking the bald look and all that stuff, but yeah, that it's quite interesting always, like when you watch movies years later. I'm like, oh, I didn't realize this was happening and all that sort of stuff. But also too funny because Selma Hayek, who's in this movie, plays Kevin James' love interest essentially. It's funny that she plays a school nurse again because she previously played a school nurse in The Faculty, which is a different type of movie. But at least here she has more luck compared to her fate in The Faculty. I will not spoil it, but if you've seen that movie, you will know what I mean by that. All right, let's get into the highlights. So, um, I found it was quite tolerable, especially as a Happy Madison production. It was not overtly annoying, thank God, like with the jokes and all this stuff. But yes, like you still have those, I guess, isms with some of the jokes going a bit too far. Um, Examples would be the applesauce bit after when Scott like eats the spoiled applesauce, he throws that up later after winning his first fight. And also too, there was a bit with the whole cheesecake thing, which in a way kind of reminds me of in Miss Congeniality, where like Sandra Bullock is not able to eat the goodies because she has to maintain her physique for the competition. So similar here with Kevin James, he couldn't eat the cheesecake because he has to maintain his physique, obviously. But here, it's interesting that he that somehow leads to a food fight, which I feel like yeah, like it wasn't necessary, but I guess as a movie part of Happy Madison, I guess you have to include that stuff. I don't know. But yeah, like even though like it has stuff like that, I mean, it was like I was able to watch it just fine. I didn't cringe a lot. Um, as a sports film, it was entertaining. I believe this is my first like MMA movie I've seen. I know that like before like I think with the Jet Li movie, it must have been Cradle to the Grave. There was a kind of like an MMA scene there, but also too I think another Jet Li movie, Unleashed. You could argue that's in a way MMA, even though it's more like illegal. Goes on the illegal side with that one, the underground, I suppose. But um, but yeah, like as an MMA film, I quite enjoy it. I'm not too familiar with the sport itself, but I found like yeah, like it works, I guess, for with its intention and all that stuff. I found like the MMA scenes like were enjoyable to watch. I thought it was nicely choreographed and well shot at times, and the music choices I thought were great, and like the comedy in those scenes worked for me. Um, I want to point out like Scott's first fight was hilarious, where he decides to wear this Viking type armor, which was unnecessary. But what was hilarious, like with that scene, is that he gets like knocked out immediately, just after like the first kick, which was hilarious. But I guess to show that he's not, he doesn't really have the skills as an MMA fighter, but he tries, even though he's like he used to be a wrestler and all that stuff. Yeah, the music choices I found were nice. Obviously with Scott's entrance music, Boom, was very energetic. It really gets you into that fighter type mood. And the scene when he discovers the other fighter using his song, it's funny that like it that Marty changes to a Neil Diamond song. And it's just funny how that scene plays out, like with the audience not responding to the song. But like Marty and Scott, they try to keep the energy going. And I thought, yeah, that was quite hilarious. But maybe in a way, like that song was his good luck charm because he ended up winning that fight at the end. So I guess kudos to Neil Diamond. Also to highlight, I liked Kevin James. Like this is quite like a different, not like different, but like he was quite different, like compared to the previous stuff that I've seen. Because for one, like he kind of physically transforms as his character and all that stuff. So, and I found that like he was not annoying compared to his previous works, and yeah, and it's nice that he gets very like physical and it doesn't go for like the typical fat jokes like how his character does in I'm blanking Grown Ups. Grown Ups, yeah, that's the movie. Yeah. And I like how with his character he cares about helping Marty because there's an aspect of the character I'll get into in the lowlights section, but I like here how he doesn't think about himself. He decides to help Marty out. I mean, he didn't have to technically, but he decided, that he will like to save the guy's job and all that stuff. And yeah, it was nice that he took the initiative by doing the MMA games and all that stuff, even though he has no clue what he's doing. But it's just nice that he has that caring, that humanitarian side to Scott's character. And with Marty, oh Marty, like I thought Henry Winkler did a good job as a character, and yeah, clearly Marty, he's quite clueless when it comes to MMA and all that stuff, but he tries his best to help Scott out. Like, but there was a scene when he forgets to bring Scott's chair to sit in between rounds. So he ends up becoming the chair for Scott to sit in. I thought that was hilarious, but yeah, Marty tries the best he can despite his limited skills. But I would say as a musician, like he knows all about that stuff, so no wonder why he is the best music teacher. And yeah, like his job was worth fighting for in this movie. And Nico, I like Nico. He was quite adorable as Scott's coach and student at the same time. It's funny. It's interesting that Nico he has the many like instructor jobs because like when Scott first meets up with him, it looks like he's teaching some sort of dance or like aerobics class. I wasn't too sure. And then after briefly teaching Scott, where essentially Scott gets like knocked out, I feel like it's funny that he quickly changes like to this like outfit by just ripping clothes off, and then starts teaching this cycling type class. I thought was fun. But yeah, like as the coach, like he was great. Like he's quite physical, like with his teaching and all that stuff. So yeah, I thought he was solid in this movie. Um, in terms of scenes, I enjoyed the MMA stuff, of course. But outside of the MMA stuff, if I were to choose, like when Scott when he's finally teaching biology class to his students was nice because he's like very engaged, like he stands up like to help the students learn the lessons and all that stuff. And it's funny like how he tries to like rumble. I put that in quotes, was fun. And of course, Bella notices that when she passes the classroom. Another scene I enjoyed when Malia she helps Nico to help him out with the citizenship chess, not test, sorry, not chess. And Because interesting that she uses like music to help him remember the terms and all stuff, and clearly that works as he tries to um, answer the questions and all that stuff. So I thought that was cool, and also too it's funny that like with Scott, like he has to carry Marty back and forth on the features I thought, yeah, that was a fun scene to watch. And then also too, I enjoyed when Malia and everyone at the school choir is singing Scott's entrance song before the final fight at the UFC tournament. That was cool. Now, in terms of lowlights, so I felt like um in a way it tries to be sort of like this MMA version of the School of Rock. So you could say that with Scott and Dewey, Jack Black's character are quite similar, but even though there's notable differences, obviously. But the thing is, like with Dewey, he, actually cares about the music and all that stuff, even though like his methods throughout the movie are questionable. While with Scott, it seemed like he just does not care. Because I just wondered, like, why is he at the school if he has, no ambition and all that stuff? It just, it just makes me wonder, like, why hasn't this guy been fired? Um, and yeah, and with Scott, he comes across like as a jerk during the first act of this movie because he oversleeps, like we saw during the opening credits scene and he shows up to school late and he sneaks into the classroom to try to pretend like he was teaching the kids a lesson, even though, it was not the case. And he gives like Marty the bus duty when he was supposed to do the bus duty. So I just wondered like what was his like motivation during that first act though? Because during the opening scene, we see there's like a photo of him where he won like Teacher of the Year, I think back in 2002. So it just made me wonder, like, did he lose the passion for teaching throughout the years? I don't know, because maybe like maybe his character could have not liked the school politics and all that stuff, which is why he slacks off. But yeah, I just wish like that aspect of the character could have been more like redefined than just him being this slack or loser, I suppose, during that portion before he um gets into MMA and then obviously like he goes through a transformation and all that stuff. So I think yeah, that could have been more defined. Also too as a low light, I just wondered like how Scott and Marty are friends. I just wondered like was Marty able to tolerate, Scott's BS or something? I don't know because we see like the introduction of their friendship was when Scott visits like Marty during his session and all that stuff, but I just wondered, like, why they're friends to begin with. I don't know, or is it like Scott uses Marty to take advantage of him? That may seem to be the case, but I don't know. I think that could have been more defined here. Maybe like there could have been this whole like mentor mentee type of situation that maybe like Scott, maybe like Marty tries to influence Scott to, be a better teacher and all that stuff. I don't know, but it could have been reshaped with that relationship. Also too, I felt Scott and Bella's relationship was forced because it was clear that she was going to be the love interest from the get-go, and yeah, like it was obvious they were going to get together towards the end, even though she tries to dismiss his advances throughout the film. But yeah, like the signs were there obviously, but yeah, like I didn't mind them being together, but I just wanted to point out that yeah, like it was obvious they were going to be together uh, from the get-go. That whole twist of the vice principal embezzling funds I thought that just came out of nowhere. I felt like that was just placed to get Scott to change his way from just from fighting essentially to lose the fights to doing the fights to win the money and all that stuff. So if this was the original intention, I think there could have been more clues, maybe subtle clues of the vice principal being schemy and all that stuff. So yeah, like because maybe like when Scott, gives him the money, maybe like the vice principal could be like, smiling away. I don't know, but yeah, there could have been more hints, to the vice principal's, behavior than just putting it there out of nowhere. Um, in terms of like the technical aspects of this movie, it was just weird that the film looked dark. Like I don't know if it was the color grading or if it was just a choice of lighting or a combo of both, but yeah, it looked quite depressing this movie. I mean, you could really tell like with the outdoor scenes. Like I caught that during the opening sequence, for example, when Scott is on his way to school. But also too, you could really tell that during the with the indoor scenes as well too. So I wondered, was this intentional? Was this an aesthetic choice to show that will be a gritty movie or something? I don't know. Or maybe to showcase, this is the film's version of Boston. I do not know, but I just did not like that choice. And in a final note for Lowlights, the car scenes for me looked fake. Um, because it looked quite obvious that they shot this either in front of a blue or green screen, but I felt like they could have done a better job to edit that stuff or just shoot it in a way where that stuff is not noticeable. So, let's go into trivia. So, I did not put everything, but here is a select few that I found on IMDb. So Kevin James, he started physically preparing for the role 14 months before filming. He lost around 70 to 80 pounds, which is impressive. As I mentioned before, yeah, it was a very transformative role for him. Prior to filming, Bas Rutten, who plays Nico in the movie, met a man at a party who tried to claim that he knew a unique form of street karate, which had a special routine of fight moves that had saved his life 6 or 7 times from attackers in the past. Oblivious to the fact that Rutten was a professional martial artist, the man then demonstrated his routine, which consisted of a string of obviously choreographed and impractical headbutts, knee strikes, and stamps. Rutten was so amused by this man's obvious lie that he incorporated the man's alleged routine into Nico's dance class in the film, which I find, yeah, that's interesting. Interesting. I don't know why just now, like I'm kind of thinking of that story involving Steven Seagal. Like I can't remember what film back in the day where apparently he claims behind the scenes that he's this very high skilled martial artist and all that stuff, and then I forgot the name of the person, but I think his name is Gene something, where he tried to call Seagal's bluff and all that stuff, and I can't remember the full details, but apparently legend says that yeah, like Steven Seagal like was intimidated and and all that stuff. So I can't remember that full story, but I don't know. In a way, reading this just reminded me of that in a way. But okay. So, also too, so the story Nico tells Scott about why he was unable to fight in UFC is based on Bas Rutten's own experiences. Shortly after beginning his career with UFC, while training for his third fight, he blew out his knee as well as sustained other injuries, forcing him to retire, which yeah, is unfortunate. So also too, Shel Sonin's quote, I didn't tap was not originally in the script, but when he had done it, Kevin James liked it so much that he kept it in the movie and awarded him with a $200 bonus. Chael Sonnen's cry of "I didn't tap" is a UFC in-joke. Years later, Sonnen yelled the same thing in protest after losing his title shot to then-champion Anderson Silva. Interesting. And a final fun fact, Kevin James at the final fight scene when he lifts his opponent up with the arm bar, the crew wanted to use a crane to hoist his opponent up, but before they did, he wanted the crew and extras to see that he could do it himself, doing it 3 times in a row. Fascinating. All right, so I always end up with this question. Should this movie be rediscovered? So here's what I'll say to that. If you want to turn your brain off for less than 2 hours, I would say sure. Like it's quite enjoyable as a sports comedy, but for me, it doesn't do quite enough to reinvent the genre because the stereotypes and the cliches are obviously there. But it was just appreciated that Kevin James he like transformed for this role, and it was nice to see MMA in a more comedic light compared to a lot of MMA uh, films that are more in the drama or darker tone, I suppose. So that pretty much concludes this episode of the podcast. So you can find me on Instagram, X, YouTube, and Linktree at Numpy Malloy. You can find the podcast on Instagram, X, YouTube, and Linktree at RD Movies Pod. You can visit buymeacoffee.com/RD Movies Pod to donate. If you guys use Spotify on the app, you can answer the feature poll. You can leave a comment and rate the podcast. On Apple Podcasts, you can leave a review and rate the podcast. You can submit questions, comments, and suggestions by email, which is rediscoveredmovies@gmail.com, which could be featured on the after show, which will air after the season finale. So I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I hope to catch you on the next one.